short bit of your time to go through the slideshow for the light and heavy vehicle repair framework. I said hopefully won't take up too much of your time this afternoon. So just a quick agenda. It shouldn't take the sort of hour that we've got set aside, but we'll do a wee question and answers set up at the end of the presentation should you have any queries. So just to give you a sort of definition of what the framework actually entails, the purpose of the framework is to allow the council to appoint a number of service providers for the light and heavy vehicle repairs. The aim of the framework is to get as many garages and providers appointed as possible. And once you're appointed to the framework, you'll be sort of given work through sort of two means under the call-off process. The call-off from the framework can either be direct award or mini competition, and we'll touch on that later. So if you're already aware, which I hope you will be, the PIN notice, which is the prior information notice for the framework, was issued on PCS on the 2nd of October 2025. So if you are attending today through word of mouth or any other means, there's a link within this presentation for Public Contract Scotland, and the document ID is 808506, and that will take you directly to the PIN notice. So just to give a bit of background to PCST, the way the framework will be published, the title will be the Framework for Light and Heavy Vehicle Repairs, Mechanical and Electrical, including servicing and MOTs. Project code can be accessed under project 30280, and the ITT codes, the 4 ITTs in total. So ITT stands for Invitation to Tender. We've got a Master ITT, Lot 1, Lot 2 and Lot 3. The projected publish date is the 1st of December, and given that will sort of lead into the festive holidays, the tender will run open until the 16th of January next year. So that gives bidders around 6 weeks to get their submission in. So just a small brief on the sort of operational side of things. Hopefully my colleagues Stephen and Ali can maybe fill you guys in a wee bit more after the slideshow. Like I said, we've got 1,700 vehicles in the council's fleet, consisting of light and heavy, and the purpose of the framework is to get garages and providers on board to assist with the ongoing repair works. The framework itself, once appointed, will run from the 1st of April 2026 to the 31st of March 2028, with a council optional extension of 24 months. So the way the framework is structured, it's split into 3 lots. So lot 1 is your light and heavy light vehicles and minibuses up to 3.5 tonnes, with the subsequent sublots for mechanical, electrical and service and MOT. Lot 2 is similar, although this is for the heavy vehicles and the larger minibuses, and you'll see there that lot 2.3 is service only. The council already have arrangements in place for heavy vehicle MOTs, so that will not be included within the framework. And lot 3 is supplementary plant, again mechanical, electrical and service repair. Estimated annual spend for the framework across all lots is around £800,000 per annum. We don't have a breakdown of where that 800,000 is sort of designated at the moment, but overall, based on the light, heavy and plant, we're looking to spend around 800 grand a year on repairs. So Francis touched on it earlier. The tender will be published through Public Contract Scotland tender, and this will be the only means to submit a tender for this project. The council don't email or post out hard copy versions of the tender. The only way to access it is through the online project itself. Once the project's up and running, there'll be a question and answer facility, which will run up to 10 days before the return date of the actual tender. So you'd probably look at the 6th of January roughly would be the closing date for all questions. The system allows you to submit questions beyond that date, and the council will pick that up. We're not required to respond to any questions after that date, but 99 times out of 100 we probably will, especially if it's pertinent to all bidders. If a question is asked, which we believe is pertinent to all bidders, then we issue what's called a bulletin log, which summarises all the questions that's been received to date and the council's response to that. Though you're all aware, the council has no access to any bids prior to the closing date. So if the bidders do have any issues, they can contact the council through the question and answers facility, or if it's a system issue, contact the PCS Tender Help Desk on 0800 069 8630. So one thing to sort of keep in mind with that, if you have submitted your bid, the council can't go in and check to make sure you've uploaded everything that's required. So you need to ensure that you've done that correctly. So it's probably worthwhile just keeping a wee checklist. Just keep it as a moving document as you go along as part of your tender submission, just to make sure you've basically dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's and uploaded all the appropriate documentation. So projected closing date is 12 noon on the 16th of January. And this is another thing that bidders really need to be careful of. Although the system will allow you to upload a late tender, the council will not accept it. So if it hits 5 minutes past 12 on the 16th of January and you submit your bid, that will flag up by the system that it's late and it will automatically be excluded. So getting into the sort of nitty-gritty of the tender process, the tender process is split into 3 envelopes: a qualification envelope, technical envelope, and a commercial envelope. Now, the way you'll see this structured once you access the project, the qualification envelope will sit on an invitation to tender called the Master ITT. Now, this must be completed prior to completion of the technical and commercial. The technical and commercial will sit under each individual lot. So lot 1, lot 2, and lot 3 will have their own technical and commercial envelopes, and the Master IT is basically the umbrella invitation to tender that sits above that. The qualification has your bid information, exclusionary criteria, selection criteria. Your technical envelope has your award criteria, which is your technical and quality questions, and your commercial envelope is obviously your price submission. So to break that down further, your qualification envelope contains what's called the single procurement document, known in the industry as the SPD. So the SPD itself is split into 3 sections. Section 2 is information about the bidder, so that's bidder address, a company's house number, their VAT registration, email addresses, all contact details, etc. One thing you should look out for in section 2 of the project is question 2A18, which is the lots question. So within that question, you'll be asked to confirm which lots you wish to bid for, including all the sublots that are relevant. So it's just important that that's ticked off. It's a simple sort of yes/no question, so it should be straightforward. So that's section 2. Section 3 of the qualification is your mandatory questions, also known as exclusion questions. And these questions, again, simple yes/no set of questions. This asks the bidder to confirm they haven't been involved in any sort of criminal activity, so drug trafficking, money laundering, been guilty of not paying tax, etc. So that should be straightforward to any bidders. In the event, the unlikely event I should say, that you do happen to be found guilty of one of the criteria, by selecting yes as your response, the system will generate what's called a conditional question. And within that conditional question, you would detail what your organisation was found guilty of and what self-cleansing measures were taken to essentially the outcome of the guilty verdict. What steps did your organisation take as part of your self-cleansing measures to address that? What you should be aware of is if you do tick yes to any questions, the system will automatically reject the bid. Then it's up to the council to make the decision that they're happy with the self-cleansing measures taken and that they're satisfied that your organisation is in a position to contract with. Very rarely do we have this situation, and 9 times out of 10, somebody's ticked yes by mistake. So just be aware of that when you're completing your SPD. Section 4 of the SPD is the selection questions, and these are the ones that are set to pass-fail. So one of the key questions there will be your experience in undertaking these type of works. The council will ask you to demonstrate what experience you have in the field, and if they're satisfied with that, your response will be passed. If not, it'll be failed. There's also additional questions within section 4 around financials, etc., which council also take on board that you're financially stable and at no risk of financial collapse, just to mitigate any risk the council might have of obviously leaving vehicles in a premise that then goes bust. So that'll be based on financial ratios, and there'll be bidder guidance within the qualification envelope to guide the bidders with each question that's asked. If you fail to pass the qualification, the council will not consider your bid any further, and your technical and commercial response will not be looked at. So once you've passed the qualification, which I'm sure you all will, we will access your technical response, which will be in each individual lot. Within the technical envelope, you'll be asked a series of technical questions, which basically assesses your capability and capacity to take on the works required from the council. So generally, it's about half a dozen questions, and try and answer them at the best of your ability. Again, there will be bidder guidance around each of the questions. The council use a scoring methodology of 0 to 100 in 25 increments, and that ranges from unacceptable to excellent. So unless your responses are very poor, you should be scoring well. In the event that you don't score well, then the council can take the decision to exclude your submission, and that'll be part of the sort of session that we have on the 11th of December. Gives you a sort of flavour of what the council would expect in terms of a compliant technical response, just so you're not going in blind, and you're not sure of what you need to submit in terms of evidence. We'll be able to hold your hand at that session. So once you've passed the technical, the council will then access your commercial submissions. So just to be brief on what's contained within the commercial, the framework will be based on certain pricing around labour costs, delivery and uplifts of the vehicles. And we issued a market engagement questionnaire a while back, and generally we've got a sort of consensus from the market how this should be best priced, and the hourly labour rate was the most common approach. So hopefully when you guys are bidding for this, it's quite clear cut, and there's no sort of ambiguity of how we expect this to be priced. Bidders should note that the rates submitted are inclusive of all costs and overheads, so that needs to be built within any rates that you submit. Obviously, there's in total 9 sublots across the 3 lots. If you don't wish to submit a price for each sublot, please leave the line blank. Don't enter 0 as a rate. Council will take that as gospel and expect a free service from you. So try and avoid that where possible. I know the council's a wee bit hurting for cash, but we wouldn't expect the contractors to work for free. So please don't put in 0, because we will hold you to that. I'm kidding, we obviously won't, but please avoid that where necessary. So in terms of tips for tendering, it may be worthwhile, if this is your first time producing a tender for the council, that you keep a wee checklist of your progress. So what you can do within the system is view and print the ITT weightings. What that will do is create a PDF, and it will allow you to print that off, and you can use that as a checklist for your progress. So what it'll do is it'll print every single qualification question, every single technical question, and it'll also show you the commercial envelope as well. But wee bit of guidance there. Try and use that as a checklist. Tick it off as you're going through your qualification. Answer that question, and put in your technical. Once you've answered that, tick it off, and that'll keep you sort of right in terms of where you are with your submission. And don't leave your tender response to the last minute. The 6 weeks period, so that should hopefully be sufficient time for bidders to get their submission in. Because obviously PCST is an online portal. It sits independently from the council. So if you are in a position where it's going to be at the last minute, the council unfortunately cannot help you at that stage. Any software issues or any website issues that PCST might have, the council can't unfortunately intervene. So just please don't leave your response to the last minute. The more tips, adopt a less is more approach and stick to answering the questions without unnecessary embellishment. So we'll try and keep the technical questions as streamlined as possible, make it as easy for bidders to answer as possible. As long as the bidders are essentially answering the questions as it's asked. If there's any questions that bidders aren't sure about, please feel free to send a message to the question and answer facility, and the council will be able to provide a response, give you more information if the question's not clear. So do not assume the council has prior knowledge of our organisation. So what we don't want to see is bidders who have worked for the council for 25 years just saying, you already know what I do. So that's when we start to see sort of lazy technical responses, and we need to treat those responses as if we don't know that bidder. So that will hurt, that will impact poorly on your submission. I dare say none of you will take that approach. So just be wary that the council will not take into consideration previous works. Answer all questions, not just the mandatory ones. 99 out of 100 already set as mandatory anyway, so that shouldn't be a problem. And once you've completed your response, remember to hit the submit button. So I think the submit button should be a big blue button at the top corner of your screen. I'm basing that on what we have when we publish it. We've got a big blue button that says publish, so hopefully that'll be the case for you guys. We just have to hit resubmit up the top right hand corner. What the council want to get with this is to appoint as many providers as possible across the framework, try and get as many of the sublots covered as possible, to ensure we have full coverage across as many areas within the region as possible. There's no maximum number the council may appoint, so the more the merrier. It just allows us that flexibility of capacity issues, workload issues that may arise. So once everyone's appointed to the framework, how it operates in principle is either through a direct award or a mini tender. The direct award is the most common approach based on the reactive nature of the service. Obviously, if we have a vehicle breakdown, there's no chance of us having enough time to run a mini competition. Just so you're aware of what a mini competition is, a mini competition is where we take one of the sublots and we identify a requirement within that sublot that's future looking. So if we have 20 vehicles that require service at the same time, we could potentially mini comp that. But when we mini comp it, only the people appointed to that sublot can then rebid for it. So just be aware of that when you are submitting your tender, that you cross as many sublots off as you can, just in the event that we do mini comp. But like I said, direct award is more common based on the reactive nature. So generally it'd be a ranking structure based on the combined technical and commercial score. That's generally how it works. However, again, based on reactive nature, the service provider's capacity, location, and ability to actually undertake works for a certain vehicle will come into play when the council make the decision to do a direct award. If we have a vehicle breakdown in Lanark, we wouldn't expect someone from Rutherglen to come and collect it. We would then look at the most local provider at that point. As Francis touched on earlier, there's an live tender training, which will be available on the 11th of December. And again, that will help new bidders navigate the PCST project through the qualification technical commercial. So that'll give you guys a good opportunity to see how it's done if you've not already done it before. Procurement service will be on hand should there be any queries around the content of the project. Hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that arise at that point in time. So in terms of the framework and the overall procurement process of it, do we have any questions from anyone?
Just stop the recording.